I'm David Lapp. I am a co-founder of Braver Angels. I live in South Lebanon, Ohio, and I am the director of the Working People's Project at Braver Angels, and I am going to be the moderator for this conversation tonight. We're joined by two very special guests. First, Adam Wilkinson. I say Wilk because that's what he goes by. He is the host of the Derate the Hate podcast. You should all check that out. We'll make sure to give you the links to that. He's the host of the Derate the Hate podcast and a district manager for a propane company in Clearwater, Minnesota. And he has many years of experience in the trucking industry. And then Corrie Zech is a married stay-at-home mother of three from Middletown, Ohio, and she has worked in the restaurant industry for 13 years and is currently attending college for health information management. Corrie, did I get that right? Are you in Middletown?
Yep, you're right.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. Great. Okay, well, without further ado, one other thing. If you have run into any trouble here on Zoom, our Zoom expert or Zoom event manager is Apple Muncie. Apple, if you don't mind just raising your hand. There you go. Yeah, he has the PM next to his name, which stands for Participant Manager. So he's there to just, he'll be there helping me identify questions during Q&A. But in general, if you're having any Zoom issues, just feel free to chat Apple. All right, let's get started. We'll just jump here right into the conversation here. And Wilk, let's start with you. We'll start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are. Tell us about where you grew up, what you did after high school, and where you live today.
All right. As he said, I'm Wilk. I'm the host of the Derate the Hate podcast. And first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. Well, I started working very young in life. I started working when I was 10 years old. I've been working ever since. Never been without a job since I was 10 years old. So 35 years of working experience. Worked almost full time, mostly through high school, and then just graduated, went to college early. Joined the Navy a couple years out of high school after college, and me weren't working out as well as I had originally planned. And when I got out of the Navy, started going back to college for computer programming. Decided I was not the cubicle style kind of person to sit behind a computer all the time. Got into truck driving, drove truck for several years, and about 7 years ago took on a management role and have been managing drivers ever since. So I, depending on the year, the situation, what was going on with the company, I've managed anywhere from 12 to 25 up to 30 people, I believe, direct reports. So worked my way up the ladder. I never did graduate college, though. I've been to college several times and done everything pretty much school of hard knocks, and learned a lot of lessons along the way, and try to spread those out as good as I can to help other people avoid some of the mistakes that I've made.
And Wilk, you grew up where?
In the Midwest. I grew up Northwest Iowa, Southeast South Dakota, and a little bit, actually graduated from high school and went to college for my first year in Minnesota.
And so you've been to a fair number of places, but you're now in Clearwater, Minnesota. Clearwater, small town, suburbs. What's Clearwater like?
Clearwater is a very small town, about 45. I think it's about 40 miles right outside of Minneapolis, straight up Interstate 94. It's literally just a kind of a truck stop exit. Not a lot going on there. But like I said, there's a truck stop, a couple gas stations, couple bars, grocery store, and that's it. I mean, the kids don't go to school here. They either go to one town or the other. We're kind of halfway in between St. Cloud and Monticello, Minnesota, right on the interstate. So,
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, depending on what side of town you live in, you know, actually there's 3 different school districts that kind of intersect in Clearwater. So there's you know, a lot of good people, but not a lot going on in Clearwater itself.
Got it. And so you have spent most of your working career in the in the trucking industry, correct?
I did. After like I said, after I got out of the Navy in 1998, went to college for a year. That just wasn't working out, so I got into truck driving in 1999. So,
But were you traveling all across the country, or was that regional?
I was my first year driving was over the road. The next several years were local, doing route merchandising, being a route driver in Central Florida, and then I transferred up to Minnesota in 2009 and drove over the road again. Basically regional, but a little bit nationwide again. And then in 2014, I took the management role, and I've been manager ever since.
All right. And finally, most recently you just started, not that long ago, you started your own podcast. Just tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you know, back in April of 2020, the divisiveness, the rhetoric, the outrageous hyperbole from politicians, the interference of big tech, and the dumpster fire of social media, you know, just being so toxic, I decided that it was time to try to do something to relieve some of that toxicity. Try to talk about things, you know, the way that I grew up, and different things that I've experienced in my life. You know, I've dealt with my share of toxicity and my own anger issues, my own, you know, just pain. And I learned how to work through that, learned how to work through a lot of anger issues, a lot of broken bones, and bad stories. And I figured a lot of the stuff that I had to say would benefit other people in that toxic environment. And I just started bringing it to the table each week, and in little things that I have to share. And more recently, in the last 6-8 weeks, I started doing interviews, which is how I became familiar with Braver Angels. I interviewed a couple local ambassadors for the Braver Angels organization, and really felt that it was an organization that I could become a part of, because their message is very much in a lot of ways the same message that I portray each week. So with that said, that's kind of how I learned about the Braver Angels organization was by interviewing them, and we've got a lot of great response from that episode. And then obviously when you approached me about doing some of these forums and bringing that message to this organization, to the working people, or the We the People organization, or branch of Braver Angels, I thought that would be a very good thing, because again, anything I can do to get the message out there. I know we've got a lot of good material, and a lot of good things for people to hear, to bring down that level of hate. You know, we talk about bettering the world one attitude at a time, and that's exactly what we try to do each week. So,
all right. And Corrie, so tell us about where you grew up, what you did after high school, and a little bit about where you live today, and give us a sense of the kind of work that you've also done.
Okay, so I am actually from your neck of the woods. I grew up in a little town called, I'm from Landon, and if you know anything about that area, it's over by, if any of you have been to Ohio and know of Kings Island Amusement Park, that was essentially my backyard my entire life. I've lived in every town around there, including in South Lebanon, where David lives. I've lived in Kings Mills, which is another small town. I went to high school there, graduated from Kings High School in 2004. Got my first job when I was 15 years old, working for McDonald's. I also, and that's the only restaurant that I have worked for through my career. So I worked for McDonald's on and off after, I mean, I have 3 kids. I had kids really young. So that's pretty much all I've done. I worked at Kings Island also as a write-op for 4 years. So every job I've had has been working with the public in some form or fashion, and I did home health for 2 years as well, taking care of a wonderful, wonderful family that happens to be mutual friends of mine and my husband. I took care of their 2 little girls with disabilities for 2 years. And, that's kind of the work that I've always gravitated towards, is working with people. I'm currently in college. I literally just had my first Zoom class tonight, like an hour ago, in biology, and I am studying to be in health information management. So my career goal is to get, I would really like to work in a medical records department of a hospital. That's kind of where I'm going with it. Specifically, I would like to work for Cincinnati Children's. That's kind of where I would like to go, but got to start from the ground and work your way up the ladder there. I'm stay-at-home mom while I do college, and I live currently in Middletown, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes north of Kings Island and that area there. It's it's interesting if you talk to people around, it kind of has a bad rap because it's right off of Interstate 75. So that's huge transport for the opioid epidemic. So there's a lot of opioid stuff going on here, a lot of heroin addicts, lots of addiction going on here. So it's tough to kind of live right in the middle of that. But I've lived here for, I think, 2 years now. We've considered staying here. So, I mean, things can change, but that's kind of where.
And listeners might be familiar with J.D. Vance and the book and the film Hillbilly Elegy, which of course J.D. Vance, grew up in Middletown, and that's where you live.
And it's been put on the map for that reason, and that book and the film that they actually filmed here in Middletown has brought kind of a lot of, I don't want to say publicity, but it's definitely put it on the map. People know where it is now, where before, if you would have said to somebody, well, I'm from Middletown, Ohio, well, where's that? Now people know. And it's been kind of odd because I've had conversations with people about, the fact that I live in Middletown. So you've read Hillbilly Elegy, you know what it is, right? And of course, I read the book, loved the book, saw the movie, loved the movie. So it's kind of interesting.
And J.D. Vance, right? That's the next thing they tell you, right?
I wish, but no.
Okay, great. So now you said am I right? 13 years? When you said all of your restaurant experience has been at McDonald's, so does that mean you have 13 years of experience working at McDonald's?
Yes, I have a grand total, but I've worked there 3 or 4 times because I was a stay-at-home mom when I wasn't working. I tried college several times. It didn't work for a lot of reasons. But every time I went back to work, I've literally went back to work at McDonald's because that was where I could get a job the fastest. I have a lot of experience, and it was easy to walk into any McDonald's with my knowledge and be like, I really need a job. Can you work with me? And most of the time they said yes. So it worked out quite nicely.
And finally, before we go into the issue here that we're talking about, just briefly, Wilk, first you, Corrie, and then Wilk, just give us a sense of how you lean politically, how you think about how you approach things politically.
I don't particularly align myself with either or. I find things on both sides that I can agree with. I probably lean more towards the liberal side, like the left, but I wouldn't say I'm completely like all the way on the left. I do find some of the what I call old school values. I do still kind of agree with a lot of those things. Like I believe in working, you should be able to work for what you have. You should work for what you have and earn it. It can't just be given to you. But on the same time, you get issues like this where I'm kind of on the opposite spectrum from a lot of other people. So.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Wilk? How do you lean politically?
I would definitely put myself in the conservative/libertarian category. I'm very much the smaller the government, the better. very much individual liberty. And yeah, the first thing I look at in relation to everything is try to be a pragmatic response, with individual liberty being first and foremost on the post when I think about anything. So whether it benefits me or not, it's individual liberty is always going to be the first and foremost thing when I look at any subject.
Okay. All right. Well, let's jump right into it. So we're talking about the expanded unemployment benefits that, so the background here is that it was in March 2020 that Congress passed and President Trump signed into law the CARES Act, which part of that was establishing an additional $600 at that time per week for those receiving unemployment benefits. So that was on top of whatever unemployment benefits you would receive. So it was an additional $600 per week. That expanded unemployment benefit, I think it lapsed for a little bit, then it was renewed in December of 2021, but it was this time it was an additional $300 per week. And that's where it is today. It's an additional $300 per week, and that is set to expire in September of this year. Although some governors are now saying we're not going to do that anymore, we're stopping that at our state, but most states are still doing it. So Corrie, let me start with you. The expanded unemployment benefits, in your view, are these benefits fair to American workers? And what have you seen and experienced that leads you to your view?
So my years of the restaurant industry, I mean, those are minimum wage jobs. Pretty much any restaurant you go to, unless you're talking about like a higher class restaurant, you're talking about your Olive Gardens or your Cracker Barrels, the ones where you can actually that are designed for you to go to and sit down and be there for any length of time. Those will typically pay a little bit more to their hourly staff. They don't pay their servers anything more. They usually make normal, but like those jobs are hard. Let's just put it out there. They're hard. They're designed to be fast. They're designed to be as in and out as quickly as you possibly can. And in today's society, working with people, there are so many people out there who are completely impatient, will belittle you. I've been belittled myself and told that because I'm working in the place that I was working, that I was treated as if I was low class because that's where I happen to be working. Never mind, the family situation that I'm in currently, those people deserve way more than they actually get. In my experience, now I can't say all of.
Oh, she just paused on us there. Let's hope she comes back. Corrie, we hope you come back. All right, well, while she gets her, while she works on coming back, Wilk, let's go to you. Wilk, let me ask you this. Oh, wait, hey, Corrie.
Yeah, good.
Okay, there we go. We lost you for a little bit there. So just back up about 15 seconds. And if it happens again where we lose you, then I'll ask you to turn your video off because then we'll have a better chance. That'll be less likely to happen. But let's keep on giving this a shot like this. Right. I think we'll be fine.
So I definitely believe that because that added benefit, whether it be $600 or $300, is probably going to be equal to whatever income they were bringing home to begin with, working a 40-hour work week, and it still allows those people to pay their bills, pay rent, do whatever they need to do and still be able to provide.
And Corrie, so with your jobs in McDonald's, typically how much, if I could ask, how much was the wage?
When I started, that was back when the minimum wage was like $5.25 an hour, and that's what I started at.
This is when you were
General
14 years old?
15. I was
15.
15 when I started. Yeah. And most recently, I haven't worked for McDonald's in probably 4 years, but when I left McDonald's, I was only making $8.75. So a little bit over what the minimum wage is currently.
When you would, so you said that you worked for them, like stopped and started like 3 or 4 times.
Mhm.
When you would restart for them again, would your wage start again at what your previous wage was, or would you have to start over?
I had to start over. Now when I worked for the last one that I worked for, they had seen my experience and they did give me, they were starting at minimum wage, but they did start me at $8 an hour because of my previous experience. But still, it really wasn't a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. And what about any kind of benefits that you like, healthcare or anything like that they offered?
I never got healthcare benefits because in those jobs, at least for McDonald's, now this is the only one I can speak on, there may be differences of policy elsewhere. But when I worked for McDonald's, you were not eligible for any benefits at all, none, unless you somehow worked your way into a management position. And what they did was, if you were on paper considered a part-time employee, and you could work 39 and a half hours, but as long as you didn't hit that 40-hour mark, they didn't have to pay you insurance, or at least that was my understanding of it. So and they didn't offer that to anyone that was not in management at all. So
You were always working part-time for them?
Yep, always.
Typically, how many hours a week would you work for them?
Between 25 and like 35. I worked up to 40, but that was very rare.
So then one last question, and I'll go to you, Wilk. Finally, so some people may ask, well, why then work there? If there, I don't know what the options were for you at that time, but did you enjoy working there, or was it the kind of thing where that was just the best thing that was available? Why work? And this goes to now too, some people say, well, if you want, to be earning more, then go get those jobs. So what do you say to that idea?
Well, when you're desperate for a job, and I have a family and we were desperate, that was just where I went, because I knew I could get in easy. I knew I could walk in and be like, here's my experience, and had no trouble believing that I would be hired just simply based on my experience, because they were hurting. I worked there because I really didn't have any training to go anywhere else. I worked in home health for a couple of years, and that training I received on the job. But at that point in time, I had no idea that that was even an option. So I went where I need to get a job.
Did you ever enjoy working at McDonald's, or was it just drudgery the whole time?
When I first started, yes. The older I got, the more hateful people got, and I had really bad experiences with bad management, really low income stores that just didn't really care, number one, about their employees, or two, about the customers that they were serving. I always personally felt like I cared more about the customers than like even the managers did. And to me, that's not right. Without those customers, you don't have a job. So you treat them right regardless. But
okay. And basically then you're sympathetic to the expanded unemployment benefits because it's just a little bit more money that low wage workers might not be getting.
Yeah, they a lot of times if you strip that benefit and a minimum wage worker had to live on nothing but unemployment, just the benefit that they get alone, it would be next to nothing. And that little benefit provided a lot of cushion for a lot of people. So that's how I feel.
All right, so Wilk, let's go to you. What is your view on this? Are these benefits fair to American workers, and what have you seen and experienced that leads you to your view?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much, and Corrie, thank you for participating in this. I do have to say that a lot of what Corrie had to say stands in contrast to everything that I believe. When it comes to this, I know there are definitely things that her and I would agree on. would agree upon. I did start working in fast food restaurants and restaurants when I was 14. Like I said, I started working when I was 10. I talked about that, in a previous conversation. And when I started this evening, and I started working not for minimum wage. I worked in a state that allowed for the opportunity to bring on young people, and as long as you kept them under a certain amount of hours, you didn't have to pay them minimum wage. But I quickly worked my way up to beyond minimum wage. I started working when I was 14 years old for $1.25 an hour. And in less than 2 years, I had almost tripled what I was started at. With that being said, I do totally agree with Corrie when she talks about the negative way and the stigma that comes along with working in some of those restaurants, some of the service industry, period. And that stigma, while it's very cruel and it can be very, very bad for a person's psyche. I get it. I totally get it. But that's not the fault of the employer, and there's not a dollar value associated with that unless that dollar value is put on the person receiving that bad behavior. And then at that point it becomes a choice, and that choice is something that a person has to decide for themselves. Is that worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Because if it's not, then you have to move on and find something else. Because again, when it comes to the concept of minimum wage, I mean, the minimum wage concept for the government to place a minimum wage mandate upon an employer is just based on flawed logic, and it actually hurts the people that it's intended to help more than anything. Because what happens, well, let's actually tie this back to the unemployment benefit that we're talking about tonight. When you take the government, and the government has dictated what that employer must pay its employees, okay? And that business has determined the value that they can place on that job that they want that person to do, okay? They know the value that they can provide based on each individual employee's job that they're doing. They've got that value placed. When the government decides that they're going to make the mandate to pay that employee more than that value that company is placed on that position no longer exists. Okay. But if the government starts to give free money away, and I use the word free loosely because there's nothing in this world that's free. When they start giving away free money, it disincentivizes people to work. And for what we were going to consider, and don't take this the wrong way, but those positions that are considered low skill that generally pay minimum wage are mostly for people who started at McDonald's when she was 15, like Corrie did, or started at the restaurant that I did when I was 14 years old. Those positions can be done by youngsters in high school that can work, 12, 14, 18 hours a week. And you can just get more people, to do, you're not going to take a position like that you can get 3 youngsters to work in a week and absorb those 40 some hours that need to be absorbed, because those youngsters will do it for, minimum wage, whatever minimum wage is at that given time. They can do that. There's no incentive for that company because, and I will just tell you this from an employer standpoint, there's no incentive for that company to keep somebody on full time, because the government has already mandated that if a single person works a certain number of hours, they have to be offered benefits. So it's actually the government regulations that stand in contrast to what Corrie wants, and that's benefits. Okay, so that's a whole nother conversation. But the unemployment, let's go back to the unemployment. When you start taking an amount of money that is greater than what the average person can work at in a fast food restaurant or another, what you would call low skilled position. What happens is there's two things that happen. Number one, those restaurants will go out of business because they can't find people that will actually take those jobs. Number two, the people that do stay home or stay open will start to take on cash incentive employees. Okay. They will start to pay people under the table to do the job that they need to do. And the people that will do them are more than happy to stay at home, collect unemployment, and collect cash payments. So now nobody's paying taxes. The boss is putting themselves, or the company's putting themselves in jeopardy of getting in trouble. The employee is actually putting themselves in jeopardy of a unemployment fraud situation. And what happens is now the government has placed everybody in a position where there's more incentive to break the law to try and take care of your family than there is to do things on the up and up. Because let's just face it, a lot of people, it's not that they aren't working, it's just they're not working legally. There's a lot of dignity in work. And we all know, everybody on here knows that nothing's free. You might try to convince yourself that something's free, but everybody's paying for it one way or the other. There's nothing free. Nobody rides for free. I don't care how you slice it. Okay. So when it comes to those choices, we can either make the choice to stay in, again, what's comfortable, a low skilled position. And a lot of people do it. And there's a lot of respect that goes along with that. I'll never degrade somebody for working in fast food. I'll never degrade for somebody for working in a convenience store or working, whatever the job is. If you're working a job, there's dignity in that job. There's purpose that comes along with working to provide for your family. But what happens is when they start dangling out that free money, which is not free, but they start dangling that out there in front of you like a carrot, it's just like a drug deal. Because being addicted to free is every bit as bad as being addicted to heroin, crack, methamphetamines, whatever the case may be.
Wilk, question for you. Sorry to interrupt, but have you, with your in your role as a manager at the propane company, have you, we hear some journalist reports about companies saying that it's been hard to hire in the current environment, and some of them say it's because of the expanded unemployment checks. Are you seeing it difficult to hire people since the pandemic, or are you guys able to get all the workers that you need?
Oh, it's never been more difficult to find a truck driver, right? I mean, it's never been more difficult to find a truck driver right now. There isn't a trucking company in the country that's not looking for qualified drivers right now. And there's multiple reasons for that, and unemployment is just one of them. But with that being said, you look on Indeed, LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, Career Builder, any of those, and there's more truck driving jobs right now than there is qualified truck drivers. And and it's not even that there's more qualified or more jobs than there is drivers, because there's drivers out there that aren't working. But when it comes right down to it, that those expanded unemployment benefits disincentivized people from working. And if you want to take it even back even further, you take it back into I think 2009 was the first time that anybody since unemployment had been the inception of unemployment benefits, and I use the word benefits loosely. In 2009, Barack Obama got rid of the look for work requirement. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, and I apologize. But he made it so you didn't actually have to be looking for a job to get paid for not working. So that was a problem in and of itself. But then you take that back to modern day. Okay, you have the pandemic that started. You have the government that forced hundreds of thousands of businesses to close. Making people that want to work sit at home when they would, that many of them would have just as soon been working. But then you dangle that carrot out there, that free money carrot, you know, and people kind of got used to that. Well, it's not, you know, maybe it doesn't benefit me to go back to work. Now, I will tell you, every single one of my drivers has been coming to work the whole time. I'm in an industry that was, you know, I think every business is an essential business, but mine was considered an essential business. You know, we provide fuel that keeps everything going, forklifts. So anything in the shipping industry, you know, with the exception of some of those that have electric forklifts that don't work nearly as good as propane forklifts, but they're running on forklift gas. They're running on propane gas, right? Home heating. You know, anybody who doesn't have natural gas or a good wood burner is burning propane.
You guys never shut down, basically.
We
You had
did
to
not
keep on
shut
working.
down. We didn't shut down a single day. I've been at work every single day since this thing started, and with the exception of a few guys, you know, every one of us has been at work every single day. You know, but we've seen a lot of people, and actually we did it with less people than we should have, because I've been running a job advertisement for several months now, was getting no applicants. So then I started running an ad with a signing bonus. And in the last 5 months, I've been running an ad with a signing bonus, and I've got one applicant, just one. Whereas pre-pandemic, I had, even when I didn't have an ad running, I had people coming in, just walk-ins coming in, asking, what does it take to get into driving trucks? What do I got to do to start driving a truck? And, you know, so
got it. So you see a big difference pre-pandemic and post-pandemic.
Absolutely. And it like I
said, we'll just wrap it up in about 15 seconds. And I want to ask Corrie if she has any thoughts in response to what you've been saying.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I just want to say, I trust me, I'm totally, you know, empathetic to the situation and to the plight of people that work in the restaurant industry or convenience store, or, you know, a lot of your hospitality stuff, you know, or any industry that goes with the so-called minimum wage. But again, it really comes down to choices and the choices that we make. You know, if it's a comfort level, I get it. You know, if it's the only thing that's close for me to walk to work, I get it. There's all kinds of reasons, but we all have choices to make, and those choices determine how it plays out. But it's really not the fault of the employer, and government is not the answer. You know, the government's not the one that needs to be paying the bills.
Corrie, so you're listening to this, and I know that you probably have a million thoughts swirling in your head. I just want to, but you can say whatever you want in response. I want to read something that was actually part of the inspiration for this debate, was helping me realize, oh yeah, this is a hot topic. We should discuss this. On Facebook, you had posted the following. Let me just read this. You said, "It is ridiculous that you people complain about people not working. Why should someone choose to go back to struggling? People are finally realizing what they're worth and realizing that these jobs in the service, retail, and even the healthcare industries are not worth the stress and hassle for the meager income they provide." So I guess say more about that, but also just anything in response to Wilk that you've been hearing, your thoughts.
So first off, I just want to say, Wilk, I respect your opinion, and I do believe that there are a lot of things we could agree on. And thank you very much for participating in this as well. And you were talking about choices. Well, yes, and that is my whole point about, I want to understand why people who are finally able to realize what they're worth, what those jobs are worth, because those jobs are not easy. There is plenty of research out there to, I don't want to say promote, I'm looking for the right word and I can't think it, to prove that raising the minimum wage would actually benefit people. And it's not something they want to do over time. But basically what I meant by that was, there are people who are out there who got laid off from minimum wage jobs, and they're at home, they're making this money, and they're finally, instead of struggling to living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, wondering where their next meal is going to come from, how they're going to pay for childcare, how they're going to do this, how they're going to do that. They're finally able to do those things comfortably and able to actually, I don't want to say live a stress-free life, but realize that there is a way for them to do these things without having to be mentally and sometimes physically, because the jobs in the healthcare industry, mainly the ones that I'm talking about, it's not your nurses, it's not your doctors, it's not any of the quote unquote high paying healthcare jobs. I'm talking about the STNAs, the PCAs that you see in hospitals, the environmental people.
No, she paused on us, but I'm sure she'll come back like she did the last time. Let's just give her a moment here. While she is coming back to us, Wilk, I want to ask you about something. So you, oh, there you are, Corrie, go for it. We had that slight pause again. Keep on going.
My computer's on Wi-Fi because it's a new one. So but basically, I don't believe, now what I will say is that I believe that there are people out that Wilk was talking about that they are just sitting at home. I will concede that there are people out there like that who are probably out there just abusing the system and just taking the free money while it's offered to them. There are going to be people out there who are like that, but I believe they're few and far between. There are so many families, people that I know, me, myself. The reason I'm a stay-at-home mom is not because I don't want to work. It's because I can't afford to pay for childcare for my 3 kids. Now, granted, my kids are older. I have a teenager now. So I don't necessarily need childcare. But when I was younger and working, I had to work second shift and missed out on so much time with my kids because I had to work the opposite shifts of what my husband was working. And even then, I really didn't get to work that much. There are people who can make it, but these jobs are not worth dealing with the mental, physical, and emotional stress that they put on you. They're not, because people are entitled. People don't care anymore. They used to. It hasn't always been like that. They just don't care. You're there to serve them, and that is what human empathy has been lost. It's been completely lost. And that mutual respect is not there. No one should have to be paid $7.25 an hour and be screamed at, harassed, any one of a number of different things. It's not worth that to me.
Okay. So Wilk, I want to invite you to respond, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So begin thinking about the questions that you have for Wilk and Corrie. Wilk, I want to read something that you've written at your blog, wilksopinion.com. And you wrote about the difference when resolving conflicts, the difference between achieving unity through synergy rather than conformity. So resolving conflicts through synergy rather than conformity. You wrote, to synergize is not simply to compromise, but to come up with a solution that is better than the sum of its parts. In a compromise, both parties or all parties involved generally have to give up something. Whereas with synergy, the parties come together in a combined action or operation, truly listen to one another until they understand the other position fully, and then the parties either work for a win-win or no deal. Now, I raised that because you've worked in low-wage jobs. And I know you've, from prior conversation before, the importance of worker rights, and as you mentioned here, of our society having respect for working class work. So are there any kind of synergistic solutions that come to your mind? Because, it seems like there's a conflict here between the challenges that service and retail workers, the worker at McDonald's is facing to provide for their families on the one hand, and on the other hand, that employers face to perform a service that is profitable. Are there any synergistic solutions here that we should be exploring as a society?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's generally a way in a synergistic fashion to handle almost any situation. And I just want to clarify, when I was talking about that in the Wilk's Opinion blog, and thank you for bringing that up. That is very much a concept that I learned through the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. So certainly not my, certainly that wasn't anything I developed, but it is something that I live by because I think it is so incredibly important. And if anybody does have an opportunity to read that, you can read it or check out episodes 12 through 15 of the podcast, because I talk about it in depth, that particular book. So to synergize again is to come together and look for ways that we can, instead of I give up something and you give up something, we look for a way to come up with a solution better than the sum of its parts. Now, Corrie talks about nobody should have to lose their dignity or stand around and be berated by entitled customers that want to treat the workers poorly, and I totally get that. But I also one of the things that I talk about at length in my podcast, and with anybody who cares to listen, is the idea that we cannot control the environment and we cannot control everything that happens to us all the time, but we can control, and we have to be able to control the way that we react to it. Now, to react to it in a fashion where we just say, I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it, so now somebody else needs to pay me for not doing it. That's a bridge too far, and that's something that we can, in my opinion, is almost a non-starter, because that's not a synergistic thing. And like I said, I look at everything through the scope of individual liberty, and how our independence fully depends upon us as individuals taking care of us as individuals and taking care of our families. Now, that does not mean I don't agree with a safety net, and we must have a safety net in a free society, because things are going to happen to the old who can't, to the elderly who reach a point where they can no longer take care of themselves and maybe made some poor choices throughout the course of their life, and it's too late to make up for those choices. I get that. I get that. I'm very familiar with those situations, or people who become unknowingly or unwantedly disabled. Well, nobody wants to become disabled, but it happens, right? And sometimes if there's situations as a free society that we need to make sure that those people are taken care of. Totally get it. I love the idea of having a safety net. We're the richest and most powerful country in the world. If we didn't have a safety net, what would that say about us? It's horrible. But we do have the best safety net on the planet. We can't forget that. When she says that the people who take advantage of the system are few and far between, that doesn't fly, because we know through stats upon stats from Bureau of Labor Statistics and everything else, that we have multi-generational families who have done nothing but lived off of the government welfare system since its inception, back in 1969, when Lyndon Johnson decided he was going to go take on, the war on poverty. The only thing the war on poverty ever did for the people of the United States was increase poverty. I mean, it's been ridiculous. It's been a complete and abysmal failure, and like I said, it's caused multi-generational people dependent upon the government. Dependence upon the government stands in complete contrast to freedom. You can't be a free human being and yet be dependent upon the government. It doesn't work. They don't work. So let's talk about synergy.
Wilk, sorry, just take, in the interest of time, take 1 minute, and then we want to open it up for questions.
Absolutely. So synergistic approach, right? We look at ways where we can use that safety net, but there's got to be a time limit on that safety net, and there's got to be real solutions that involve, number one, that person that is dependent upon the government. There has to be a path to independence. The path of total dependence, which is what we have right now, and especially with the left always saying, well, we can't place stigma upon them by making them look for work. We're going to make them feel bad. That's like giving participation trophies to a kid for showing up and not ever putting in the work. It's just, it doesn't fly. It doesn't pass the smell test. We're not in this to make people feel better about themselves when they've got no reason to, when they've got no incentive to go back to work. You can't do it that way. So you need to have a path to independence instead of dependence. Because like I said, when I started this thing this evening, dependent or there's dignity in work. There's dignity in work. And like Corrie said, to be faced with the berating of people and whatever,
Right.
That robs you of your dignity. I get that. But again, that's a situation where you can't control the environment in which you live, but you have to control how you react to it. Nobody should have the power over you to make you feel bad about you. You control how you feel about you. They can only do what they can do, and you can't control what other people do.
All right. So let's open this up to you all. What are the questions on your mind for Wilk and or Corrie? So just go ahead and again, raise your Zoom hand. There should be a raise hand, or you find it under reactions. And if you can't find it, you can always just raise your physical hand. So let's see here. Let's
Darcy.
go. Yeah,
Darcy.
Apple, go ahead. Who?
Darcy has her hand up.
Darcy. All right, go ahead, Darcy.
Hi. So my question is for Wilk.
Oh, and so Darcy, if you could just say your name and where you live.
Oh, my name is Darcy Crosman. I live in El Sobrante, California, East Bay. So my question is for Wilk. So my question is this. I know that you're saying that you don't agree with the shutting down and all the jobs. There are a lot of jobs that just went out, that people just didn't have job opportunities. So two questions really. What would you do in lieu of unemployment so that these people can survive, the people that there's just no jobs to be had? And is there a way, would you link the unemployment benefits to opportunity? Like if there's more opportunities, there's less of a need for the unemployment. So the more opportunity there is in an area, the less there may need to be unemployment, extra unemployment.
All right, well, Darcy, thank you very much for the questions, and I got a couple ways that I want to answer this. The initial 2 weeks to flatten the curve that we're now 14 months into, that I did agree initially with the first knee-jerk reaction. Let's get some money pumped back into the economy. Let's make sure these people are whole for a short period of time while we get this thing figured out. The idea that this thing should have carried on as long as it has, there's a lot of data to prove that it should have never carried on as long as it had with the lockdowns and the businesses that are closed. So, but people can Monday morning that all the time, Monday morning quarterback that forever, and I'm not here to debate that tonight. But so the initial thing, the initial businesses that were closed with that knee jerk, let's do 2 weeks to flatten the curve, let's shut things down, let's figure this thing out, pumping money back into the economy right away, that first wave, that little bit of money to keep people whole. I did agree with that at first. The continuation and the continued lockdowns and the continued money and everything else, that I don't agree with. But what I would have done, and if you step back and look at a couple more of the articles that I wrote on wilksopinion.com or read some more of the stuff that I've done on my sites, I talk about things that people could have done in lieu of working and things that people, there's been an opportunity to learn. And quite honestly, one of the synergistic approaches that I would have come up with was, you want to keep getting paid? Start sending me book reports. I mean, whatever. There's a lot of things that people could learn when they were sitting at home, or a lot of things that they could do. Start putting everybody, Zoom has made a huge boom since this started. If the government wanted to put money together and start giving away free money and free opportunity to people, start putting them through Zoom classes. You have to attend. My kid had to go to school in a Zoom room for the past year. Why didn't we make people collecting money do that same thing? Something like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done, but instead they just all sat around and berated each other and told everybody, made themselves look like asses day after day, and nothing was accomplished well at all. So there's
All right.
a lot of things that could have been done, but yeah, there's plenty of opportunity out there right now. I mean, like I said, there's more jobs right now than people looking for work, and to continue paying people when there's jobs out there to be had is a painful proposition for the American people.
So I saw Sam, I see your hand. I saw that Len, you did have your hand up. Do you still have your hand up, Len? Yes, go ahead, Len, and then Sam. Go ahead, Len.
Yeah, well, Darcy.
Len, say your name and where you live, Len.
I'm Len Breslow, and I live in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Some of this has been covered just now by Darcy and Wilk, but still, Wilk touched on, it seemed like the cash payouts early in the pandemic, but do you think it was a good idea, though, especially early in the pandemic, to give extended unemployment? Because there's more, you can't make everything, totally fair without without a lot of bureaucracy and wasted time. But early in the pandemic, presumably there's more unemployment where job industries were shut down because of the social distancing and the pandemic concerns. So do you think it was at least a good idea in the short term to have extended unemployment if those jobs continued to be closed, and in the hospitality and service industries, those jobs were closed down as they were?
Thank you, Len.
Yeah, and at first, like I said, I mean, nobody can convince me it was a good idea to give people more money than they were making in the first place. That disincentivized people to go back to work. Keeping people whole while their businesses were closed, while they were not able to or physically able to go back to work. If there was a reasonable proposition that their position was no longer going to be available, continuing to keep them on unemployment until they were able to find a comparable position making comparable money, that I can agree with. But no, the giving people more money than they were making in the first place, that was a horrible idea. That caused a lot of the problems that we're seeing nowadays. I mean, I know dozens of restaurants in the area where I live, never survived the pandemic. They just didn't. And mostly because the governor was not allowing people to, I mean, it was all because of the government mandates. It wasn't necessarily because they couldn't find employees. But I've got a restaurant that I used to frequent 3 miles from my house, who literally tried to come back time after time after time, and they could not find people to come to work, no matter how hard they tried. And the husband and wife that were running the show over there finally just said, you know what, if we can't find people to work, we got to close the doors, because we can't they were running themselves ragged, and they lost their business. They sunk their whole life into that business, that restaurant, and now that restaurant is gone forever because they literally could not find people because of the government mandates and not allowing indoor dining and this and that and the other. They couldn't do it. So without people willing to come back to work, that played a big part in them in that business being gone forever, their livelihood being gone forever.
All right, let's go to Sam and then Annette. Sam, go for it.
So this is Irma, Sam's wife.
Yes, go ahead.
We're in Mason, Ohio. I happen to work at a nonprofit where we give food and clothing to people, and we have a lot of jobs programs. We have job coaches, money coaches, things like that. And we also have employers come in and set up tables in our atrium. And as people walk out with their food, the employers are there offering jobs and taking applications. And I can't tell you how few people even stop to ask about the jobs. And we literally, we work very hard at getting people into money coaching and job coaching. So, and really, I think a lot of it is, you know, we do a lot of interviewing of, you know, what's going on in your life, what's happening. And very few people have taken advantage of this time to re-educate themselves into another field, to explore getting different kinds of jobs. It's been more of just stay at home and enjoy the time that you have right now until it runs out, and then it's going to be robbing Pizza PayPal all over again. And I'm not saying this I'm not saying everybody's like that, but it is a constant that we see. There was an opportunity during this pandemic for people to to get some training for very little money, very, very cheap, and in many places free. And there are a lot of employers who are willing to hire for more than minimum wage. We're seeing employers give incentives for people to sign up to start work, you know, and yet those jobs are going unfilled. So it's not that the jobs aren't there. I believe that it's more of the motivation for people to take those jobs is what's missing. And I do believe, and I work for a nonprofit. I mean, this is what I do for a living. I do believe that they were just getting a lot of money, more than what they were used to getting. The $600 was more than, you know, they got their unemployment and then they got the additional amounts. We also have like JFS and Community Action and all these agencies helping out with rent, utilities. The help out there is crazy. Effective May the 12th, people can get free cable for 6 months, you know, and really the guidelines are so loose that most people make, you know, a couple making under, I think $190,000 a year can get it for free because there's CARES money out there. And I'm seeing organizations just trying to spend that CARES money any way they can. So my point is that the opportunity for retraining is there. There are organizations like ours who are offering help to get coaching from folks to get better jobs. But people are not taking advantage of it.
I want to ask, thank you for that, Irma. Corrie, I want to ask you, you're listening to this and hearing all this. Do you have any thoughts on this? Anything that's been said that you want to respond to, say anything about?
I mean, I was thinking about retraining. People keep talking about, well, people could have used this time to retrain. A lot of times it's either that, in my experience, it's either people don't know where to go to get this retraining, but even if it's cheap, people can't always afford it. Like I just started college, and by the end of 2 years, I'm going to be $20,000 in debt. Like most people that I know personally and the experiences that I've had can't afford that. So the retraining, while it is there and the opportunities for it are there, a lot of times either people don't know where to go to take advantage of said opportunities, or even if it's cheap, they still can't afford it, you know, and that really, it's a situation by situation basis. Really, when you look at it, like for me personally, I was blessed in that I've been able to be a stay-at-home mom because my husband has a decent factory job. Like he works a factory job and has for 7 years. But then you take people like my father, for example, who was fired at the beginning of this, fired after 27 years of working for a company and pretty much forced into retirement because nobody wanted to take him on. Nobody wanted him. He couldn't find a comparable position. He had a desk job for 27 years. And now he just recently took a job in an auto parts store because that was all that was available to him. And he was forced into retirement as a result of being fired at the beginning of this pandemic. My husband, for example, was let go at the beginning of the pandemic. We lived off that unemployment because I was not working. And that unemployment because I live in a place right now that I have to pay my rent every week. And if I didn't have that, I like the term that Wilk used is safety net. If I didn't have that, or
We have a pause again, but we'll get through it and
if
just.
that extra 600 or 300 now, this internet is killing me.
You're good, Corrie. It's not bad.
This internet is killing me. Like if we wouldn't have had that safety net, we would not have had enough to make our rent, and we would be homeless right now. And that's just one example of so many people that I know who are literally relying on this. I know a lot of single.
And we just pause for a moment. She'll come back in just a moment.
Parents who without this can't afford to.
Okay, Corrie.
Why is my internet being so crazy?
There you go.
tonight?
You were saying you know a lot of single parents.
I do. I know quite a few single parents who have no safety net other than this unemployment. And it's not exactly that they don't want to work. It's the fact that they can't find reliable childcare or can't afford to put their kids in these daycare centers that charge an arm and a leg for their kids to be there. Like, it's so many more issues than just, a lot of times from what I've heard, it's just about people make it about people just not wanting to work. And there are so many more layers to that. It really does not, for the most part, have to do with wanting to work or not wanting to work. They have to figure out, can I afford childcare? Can I find somebody who's willing to work with the schedule that I need to have for said children? And I'm only basing this on children because this is the experience that I've been through. That's why I went to being a stay-at-home mom, because I was literally working to pay for childcare. We weren't getting ahead. It was actually cheaper for me to stay home and to try and use the gas and then go to work and make next to nothing. And, that's kind of my rebuttal to that.
Yeah. You raised an interesting issue there that might be worth exploring more in future forums, childcare. And of course, that's an issue that's going to be very much in the news, will be in the news with the proposal that President Biden has proposed, which includes a lot of childcare aspects to it. So maybe that's something worth diving into more in a future forum. Annette, you have your hand up. And just say your name and where you live, Annette.
Annette Ritter. I live in Little Orleans, Western Maryland. And I wanted to speak a little on this, on what Wilk was saying about basically why don't people just better themselves? I've also have been working since I was about 14 years old. Started out, $1.25 an hour, whatever. And my first jobs were car wash and waitressing. I've had to go on unemployment before. I've had to go on welfare before. I've been a poor mother. I've been just shy of homeless. And I've worked with people that were very disadvantaged in a program that was basically used to be called Welfare to Work. And I really don't feel that it's laziness. I don't feel it's lack of motivation. When you get somebody that has absolutely nothing and they are barely making it anyway, even if they're working, and everything's kind of day to day, week to week, if they lose what very little they had, they're not just struggling, they're desperate. And you can't better yourself if there's nothing to work with. You can't, a lot of like the rural places, they don't have they don't have transit systems. People have, if they have one working car and that sucker happens to get a flat tire, they're screwed. I mean, they're not making it to that job at McDonald's. They're not making it anywhere. And God help them if that unemployment benefit, whether or not it's the normal one or the one that's got a bump up, if that gets somehow lost in the shuffle, they just they're SOL at that point. And there's nowhere to go when you're at rock bottom sometimes.
And
We're not
Annette, I
just-
want to invite you to just close it out in 15 seconds. If there's a question that you want to ask, Will, go ahead and ask in a question
Yeah.
as well.
Actually, it was Corrie I wanted to ask. What were your odds of being able to better yourself from that job that you had at the time? Could you have?
There we go. So I had tried several times to move into the healthcare field, which is where I originally wanted to go, but there was a lot of reasons why I didn't. Now, at the time, when my husband got laid off, I was a stay-at-home mom then too. I hadn't been working. But could I have went to college then? Probably I could have. I didn't, because number one, I had no idea when things were going to open back up. I didn't know if I was going to be wasting my time doing something that I wasn't even going to be able to get into in a reasonable amount of time. And I looked at that, and I am one of those people that enjoyed he was off for, I think, 8 weeks. So he got to go back pretty early in all of this. And I wasn't thinking about bettering myself then, I'll be honest. Now I am, but then I was not. But then I was watching people. What inspired me to better myself was watching people like my father, who I was explaining got fired in the beginning of this pandemic, has been on unemployment up until recently when he took his new job, but he was also forced into retirement. I was like, I don't want that to be me eventually. So that's why I'm choosing to do it now instead of doing it then. Do they make a little bit of sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Corrie. And I see Jeff's hand, and then I have a question. Jeff, go for it.
Yes, thank you. Jeff Metcalf, Arroyo Grande, California. Can you hear me all right? Everybody
Yes. And Jeff, for the benefit of our of Wilk, you have to tell us your occupation.
good? Thank you. I'm of a 45-year working career. I'm 69 years old. 33 of those were as a commercial truck driver. I have 1.25 million miles on my commercial driver's license. That's
Wilk, do you
50
have that many?
50 laps around the planet. And I did it 90% local, like Wilk. I worked for a union trucking company, pickup and delivery, but I worked all kinds of equipment. I'm a retired truck driver. Oddly enough, I'm working. A former employer ran into hard times and needed some help. So I came back to do what I had done for them 20 years ago. There are a lot of jobs out there. And in California, there are a lot of jobs, but there are not a lot of people going looking for them. But really, I raised my hand, sadly, without a question. But I did want to make a
I'll
brief
give you
statement.
50. I'll give you 30 seconds, Jeff, because I do have a
Perfect.
question.
Perfect. My 30 seconds is, David, this is a great presentation. And as I listened, this forum of diametrically opposition with mutual interest in the other side's viewpoint, I found as extremely valuable and, contemporarily speaking, much needed in the society. So I thank the guests for coming. I would love to have a long conversation. I have some things I'd like to say about the topic, but it would take too long. And that's about 30 seconds.
I appreciate that. And I want to say, too, that I hear the curiosity in everybody's voices and questions and comments. And I so appreciate that as well. My question is for you, Wilk. I know that you've talked to me a very little bit about this before, and I'm wondering if you would just say, if you feel comfortable saying something about this. For you, your family background, where you grew up, working class. Did you grow up basically poor, would you say?
Yeah, yeah, without question, I would definitely fall into the category of poor. My my parents were, my dad did everything from, hot tar roofing, steel deck construction, home, framing houses. Back in the late 70s and early 80s in the Midwest, there was a lot of families that it was just hand to mouth and finding whatever jobs you could find week to week. And when the guys were coming back from, Vietnam era, conflicts and stuff like that, they just did whatever they could do. And my parents married when they were 20, 21 and 22 years old, and neither one of them had, more than a high school education. My mom worked in a clothing factory, between times when they had work to actually do, and my dad would do whatever work he could do. But yeah, we were very very low on the financial spectrum. Let's just put it that way. And there were times when my folks, and you can read another thing on wilksopinion.com. I talk about why I started working at 10 years old. It was because I wanted a motorcycle, and my dad told me to get a job at 10 years old, and I did. I got 3. My parents couldn't afford to do anything like that. We never received an allowance. We only got paid for the work that we did as a kid, and that was if my parents could afford to pay us. Otherwise, we did the work for free, and with basically an IOU, or just be thankful you're eating today. So it was we didn't have any of the luxuries that people have nowadays. For the good majority of my childhood, we didn't have we didn't have a television, we didn't have a telephone. If in order for me to make phone calls or get phone calls, I had to run up the street to the payphone or run up to the Sinclair station that was a half mile from my house. We didn't have a phone. We didn't have, a lot of times we didn't have a television.
This is in rural or small town Iowa?
Yeah, small town Northwest Iowa, and like I said, Southeast South Dakota. My dad went, finally when I was in high school, my dad on a vocational rehabilitation program. And this is another thing I was going to mention. My dad on a vocational rehabilitation program was able to go back to college and get his degree. It wasn't that, he wasn't working, low paying and low skilled jobs because he was a stupid man. He just did it because that's what was available to him. And finally, because of a back injury, he was able to get on a government program that was, it's called a vocational rehabilitation program. He was able to go to university and get his degree, and was finally able to start buying a lot of the stuff that I never had when I was a kid. But no.
Wilk, sorry, I asked you a question that really deserves a lot more, but I need you to wrap it up in 5 seconds because I want to ask a closing question of people here.
Yeah, no problem. I grew up with virtually none of the luxuries that most people nowadays have, and it was a pretty rough road to hoe when I was a kid, but we got through it, and I turned out better for it.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Wilk. Thank you both, Corrie and Wilk, for giving of yourself and sharing your experience and story and perspective. I know it's not the easiest thing, it's particularly when it's rooted from your own personal experience to be talking about like this. So thank you both for giving the gift of yourselves and sharing your story and your experiences and your views here. To wrap this up, let me say my closing question for everyone, and I invite you just to say a sentence. You can just quickly just raise your hand or your Zoom hand. The question is, what are you taking with you from this conversation today? What are you taking with you from this conversation today? And just in one sentence. And Jeff, I'll call on you first, and I'll just say that this is going to be regular recurring conversations, all with regular everyday Americans about the issues of the day rooted in our own experiences. 2 weeks from now, May 24th, same time, same place, we'll talk to Jason, who's the Galaxy Tab. It's what his name is there. Jason is a Bernie Sanders supporter, African-American man, and he'll be in conversation with Lance, who is a Donald Trump supporter, a white man, and they'll both be talking about how can we make America's political system work for America's working class. So tune in for that. But Emily, just raise your hand, one sentence. What are you taking with you from this conversation today? Jeff?
After careful consideration, my viewpoints have been confirmed. My personal viewpoints are now confirmed.
Thank you, Jeff. Sam and Irma.
Yes, my big takeaway is the whole concept of betting yourself. As when in my early 20s, I bettered myself to become a programmer, but now at nearly 50 and living life, I realized that when you have kids and responsibilities, and all of a sudden you find yourself unemployed and your kids are home 24 hours a day, becomes a lot more difficult. So the whole question of how do you better yourself? I'm just really walking away from this with a big question mark about that, because so many different life situations are so different, and I don't think there's one answer for everybody. And I think it's just something that we need to talk more about.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Darcy, what are you taking with you from this conversation today?
I just got a lot out of it, a lot of insight into this issue. It made me think and consider the amount of opportunity out there right now, and just what is the reality of the situation. It's just a lot of food for thought.
Lindy, and then Annette. Lindy, unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm coming away with the fact that it's so different all across the country, but no matter where we are, both sides were talking about if we have dignity, then we can either accept the unemployment and go forward, or we can find available work that's if there's not a pandemic going on. But anyway, I think that for me, kind of all revolves around some dignity issues.
Len? Oh no, Annette was first. Sorry, Annette and then Len.
Yeah, I'm coming away thinking this is a much larger discussion than how it started, and that we need to also maybe have a discussion on what happens after the extra benefits run out. You know, what then?
Len.
Well, I got something from both speakers, from Corrie, the problem of what happens when you just don't have options. I mean, whatever you think about it, the government shut down a lot of service industries. And so, those people were really out of a job all of a sudden because of the pandemic. But from Wilk, I got the importance of incentives and giving people the incentives to better themselves, and how that's important, when there is at least a possibility to better yourself, unlike in some situations that Corrie was talking about.
Thank you. I want to go to Apple and then Karen, and then to close us out, I want to ask Corrie and Wilk what they're taking away from this conversation today. Apple, in one sentence.
When do wages go up?
They cross.
When do wages go up? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Karen.
Yeah, although I can relate to Corrie with the things that she said from people that I know, I feel like I've lived Wilk's story, same kind of thing. And I just wonder how it is that, as kids grow up, how it is that they end up making the choices that they make to end up where they end up.
And Corrie and Wilk, what are you taking away with you from this conversation today? Wilk.
Well, first to answer Apple's question, when the economy is done being strangled by the government, that's when wages go up. It happens every single time. But anyways, we can get into that another time.
That's for next time.
The big thing is anytime, and what I like best about this evening, anytime that you can get a group of people together of differing mindsets and discuss things in a civil and rational manner with people with open minds, it's a positive thing, and I think that's what we've done here
That's
tonight.
right.
So I would congratulate everybody that's here for taking part, and I just want to thank you for the forum. Thanks for having the opportunity to speak, and anything else you guys want to know about me, I'm an open book and easy to find. My name's on everything I do. So wilksworld.com and the Rate the Hate podcast. Check it out.
Yeah, do check that out. Corrie.
Optional across.
I think what I'm taking away from this is that inherently Wilk's goal and my goal to see people get back to work are inherently the same. It's just we have different ways of wanting to see that happen. That's the biggest thing. He feels one way, I feel another way, but ultimately the goal to see people get back to work, to see the economy grow, to see families flourish, that goal is the same. It's just there's two different ways of getting there for us. And I think, and I'm going to echo what he said, when you can get a group of people with different mindsets but open minds in a forum like this and be able to say yes but, and not have to worry about somebody coming back at you with hate, that is so important. And that is how these issues are going to get solved. That's it. Open minds, open hearts, open conversation with zero hate.
For those of you who are new to Brave Range, this is jazz hands, meaning yes, All right. Everyone, I've really appreciated this conversation. Very rich. There's more to talk about here. Join next time, 2 weeks from today, with Jason right there in my lower left-hand corner, and Lance. We'll continue the conversations. Thanks so much, everyone. Let's talk again. Take care.